In the agricultural fields of Cayambe, the true equator cuts through the earth under the shadow of a massive, snow-capped volcano. Today, the surface of this region is a strange mix of precision and eccentricity. You can visit the high-tech Quetzado sundial, and right down the road pass an enormous faux European castle built in the 1990s. But the historic heart of the area is Hacienda Guachalá. It is the oldest estate in the country, currently operating as a quiet historical hotel. During recent roof repairs to the estate's 1938 church, workers discovered something hidden deep inside the rafters, a collection of mummified human fetuses. The discovery brought other dark local rumors to the surface, stories of a hidden torture room and 50,000 sterling pounds buried somewhere beneath the property. Within these borders, the national law of Ecuador essentially stopped. For centuries, the owners of Guachalá functioned as their own private government, writing the rules, enforcing them, and punishing those who broke them. To find the origin of those mummies, we have to look closely at the architectural layer they were found in, the 1930s church. Catholic doctrine barred the estate's indigenous workers from burying their unbaptized babies in consecrated ground. To keep their children close to God, the workers secretly mummified the infants and tucked them into the church ceiling. The landowner who built that church, Nestled Boniface, wielded power that rivaled the state itself. He actually won the Ecuadorian presidency in 1931, only for the National Congress to disqualify him before he could take office. Stripped of his national title, Boniface simply retreated to Guachalá and ruled the massive estate as his own absolute sovereign territory. From his manor, he dictated the terms of labor and indigenous spirituality for thousands of people, operating as a law unto himself. Digging further into the 1700s reveals a more brutal reality. At its peak, the hacienda functioned as an obraje, a massive textile workshop. The central government effectively outsourced its authority to these landowners. In exchange for the textiles produced here, the elites were allowed to maintain order through severe debt bondage and physical torture. In 1736, the French geodesic mission arrived to scientifically map the true equator, but the mission was nearly derailed by the climate of fear at the estate. The indigenous workers assumed these scientists were conspiring with the landowners to survey and seize the tiny slivers of territory the workers still managed to hold. The obraje created a space so isolated that even royal officials from the capital were often physically barred from entering, leaving the workers trapped in a world where the landowner was the only judge they would ever see. At the absolute bedrock of the property sits a Catholic chapel built in 1580. It is the oldest standing building on the estate. To build it, indigenous slaves were forced to manually move 10,000 cubic meters of earth, basket by basket. But the 1580 chapel wasn't built on empty land. The Spanish intentionally placed it directly on top of a pre-Hispanic Quitu-Cata temple. The Quitu-Cata were masters of the equator. Long before European contact, they used this exact geographic center to accurately track the sun and plot the cycles of the stars. The physical foundation of the hacienda was built on the deliberate erasure of that indigenous scientific mastery. The estate's total control eventually began to fracture. In the 1920s, socialist uprisings led by workers began demanding the return of the land. Decades of organized pressure culminated in the 1960s with sweeping agrarian reforms. New laws finally broke the power of the landowners and dismantled the 30,000-acre estate. The territory was subdivided. Much of it was given back to the indigenous workers who had lived there for generations, while other sections were sold off to private buyers. After 400 years, the borders of the estate finally gave way, and the system of private immunity that defined Guachalá since the conquest collapsed. Today, a new landmark stands on that same divided land, the Quetzado sundial. This massive 54-meter circular mosaic is a modern observatory, resting perfectly on the 0-degree latitude line. As the sun moves, its shadow sweeps across these geometric points to mark the exact solstices and equinoxes, reviving the original astronomical calendar of the Quitu-Cata. Empires can overwrite the landscape with violence, but the ancestral knowledge of the stars eventually returns to the center.